Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Jasmine. All right, well, it's really nice to see everyone. As Jasmine mentioned, my name is Shannon. I'm a Filevine optimizer here at with Vine Skills, implementing for Filevine. And let me go ahead and actually share my screen so we can get started. I just want to make sure everyone can see that screen okay.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so to kind of start off, once you're logged into Filevine, you'll want to navigate to the advanced menu. So this hamburger at the top left icon, and then you'll be able to go into advanced. This is where we're going to start our customs editor section. This is where we'll go to access the customs editor. And if you don't see it on your end, this is a permission that you'll need to be given to access the advanced feature. So if you don't see advanced, that's definitely something you'll have to kind of visit in your org to see what type of permissions you have. But here in Customs Editor, right here is where you'll go to make any edits to your entire org or specific project template. They do limit access on who can come in here, which is why we have special permissions to be able to access this Customs Editor section. So we'll go over Customs Editor and contact setup as well today, since they do kind of work hand in hand together, just to make sure you're able to track all necessary information for your cases or for your clients. So we'll start with Customs Editor first. So once we select Customs Editor, I'm just selecting my org. For you guys, it should just be defaulted to your specific org. You can go ahead and choose a project type here. Here's where you'll go to find the project template that you'll want to edit the associated sections or fields in that specific template. So if you have a personal injury case, you would have a PI template, or mass tort cases, you would have a mass tort template. Some of you may have only one template, while others may house multiple, with just different fields, sections, and folder structures that are relevant to that specific case type. So you want to make sure you're choosing the correct project type that you're going to be wanting to work with, because it will impact all projects within that template that is associated with that template, excuse me. So I think you kind of saw a peek here. We have quite a few just because we kind of do keep track of all our templates that contain best practices for every section. But for today, I'm actually going to use the free help PI template. I just had it up, so let me look for that here.
And hopefully you all don't have this many templates.
Yeah, you probably won't have this. Yeah, that's true. Oh,
Easier
here we
for you.
go. Found it. Perfect. So once you select your template, as you can see, it defaults automatically to the sections. So we have four, I guess, subsections within Customs Editor that we'll kind of walk through, but starting with sections. Um, if I want to add a new section, I would just go ahead to this big blue button on the right and click Create New Section. You start off by adding in the name of your section. So we'll call this test section. If you would like, you can get creative with this and make your template a little bit more visually appealing. So here you can actually select the icon and choose a different icon that maybe could match what specific section you're working with here. We'll just go ahead and add this notification bell. Default section visibility. So when you come here, you'll have the option to choose always visible, always hidden. Those two will be if you would like to always have that section shown in every new project created or prior project, or the section hidden for every project. Or you can have it toggled on or off, initially visible or initially hidden. So in this instance, if you want to have it then it just means that it would allow you to have the option, or the project team to be able to go ahead and toggle this section on and off manually for each project. Only a project admin will be able to actually manage these sections and toggle that visibility if either one of these two are selected, but we'll show you on the front end what that looks like and how you can actually toggle on and off. For today, we'll just say initially visible. Internal notes. This section here can only be viewed on the back end if you have this advanced access tool. Internal notes is just to kind of keep track if you want to maybe put something here where other members of your team who has the access to come into this advanced customs editor tool to be able to see the section and maybe the notes provided. But you won't see this on the front end of the project, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, so the next step is actually here where you can choose a section type. So we have your built-in sections, which are these five. When you select a built-in section, this is all you can really do for customization purposes is to edit the name and the icon of the section. Once you select built-in for the section type, once we hit save, you'll see that there's no further customizations that are allowed within this section. Let's go ahead and actually, I'm just going to recreate that section.
And that's good, like visuals. Once you create a section and choose a section type, you're not able to go in and make edits to it. So if you accidentally pressed built in and you meant to press custom, or if you meant for it to be a collection section instead of a static section as your custom option, you can't go back and make changes to it. You'll have to recreate a new one. So make sure that you all are like knowing exactly what section type that you want in there.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Yes, that's exactly correct. So it's probably good that I made that mistake because now you'll see that we can go ahead and when we recreate this section, we're going to actually make it a custom section, which allows us to add in those additional fields and widgets. So once you pop in custom for your section type, you'll have a few other questions that kind of pop up prior to saving this section and getting to start customizing. You can choose to have this section be protected, and again, to be able to allow other users to see it. If you make it a protected section, they will need to have access. You can also choose is collection or a static section. I imagine that many of you guys already know the difference between a collection and a static section, but just know that the difference is a static sections like for your intake or items that may be a settlements section, something you're only tracking once, or if you have a limited scope of data that you're collecting, it's easier for you to just add into those fields. For a collection section, it allows you to track as or add in as many items that you may need within a section. So let's say you're tracking insurance companies or medical providers, you have the flexibility to be able to add in as many necessary collection sections. Something to remember about collection sections, though. They're great for tracking purposes, but let's say you're utilizing DocGen templates that need to be pulled from a collection section. You will need to have it housed in that specific section in order to pull data. So if you're tracking medical providers from a collection section and you have letters that you need to send to the providers, you will need to house that in that collection section itself, and you can't pull specific data from a collection section into your vitals. We'll kind of get more into vitals and you'll be able to see what you can pull from a collection section, but it's not as customizable as a static section to what you can pull into the vitals.
There's a
So
couple,
just a good, oh,
sorry,
sorry, Jess.
questions. So best practice items for these internal notes, create and modify initials and date. Is there anything else that could go in those internal notes? Um, some of the things that I've seen are like if you have maybe an automation or a field is tied to another field in another section, maybe you want to note that like, hey, don't make changes to this without talking to this person, or hey, certain fields in here are connected to automations or other things, so changing it will break. Again, chat with whoever that person that oversees that section is before making any changes. Things like that are super helpful for folks to be able to visually see before they pop into a section and start going crazy and making changes. And then if they want to build a section for hearings, and sorry, Shannon, is there anything else that I missed as far as the internal notes, other things that are helpful?
No, I think you covered it. I think it's just a great way for teams to communicate back and forth without having to directly remind each other of maybe updates that were made. You can kind of keep track of that within that internal note. So you covered that for sure.
Perfect. And then the next question that came in is, I want to build a section for hearings and motions. Would that be a collection section? Oh, I might have frozen. I'm not sure.
Sorry, I froze,
Hey,
and it was just lagging a little bit. Um, I
okay.
would say, do you want to answer this, Jasmine, or I can take?
Yeah. So usually those items are collection sections because you can have multiple hearings or multiple motions for a given project. The way that I like to think about collection sections versus static sections, if there might be like 20 plus of an item, you probably want that to be a collection section. Or if there's so much variability within any given case that you're not really able to account for all of those options within a given section. Your static sections, you essentially have to build out a field or a place to track each motion or hearing that you have. And again, you won't know how many that you have on any given case until you're really in the case. So collection sections give you that flexibility. You can say, okay, this case only has two motions. Great. Other sections or other cases may have way more. And so those collection sections will give you the flexibility. It's the same data that you're tracking. You're just adding multiple cards, if that makes sense. And then one other one came in. Are we able to use reference fields to take a note from a static area and put it into a collection section? For my understanding, yes, for reference fields. I haven't had an opportunity to play around too much with reference fields. Shannon, I don't know if you have, but from my understanding, yes, that is possible.
It is possible, but I do believe if you're going to be pulling from a static area and using that reference field from a static section, it will pull exactly what's that data. So in the collection section, if you have specific fields that may house different data pieces, information within that, the reference field may not be the best bet. But if it's kind of consistent throughout on whatever that reference field is for the notes in the static area, then that's fine. And then we have one
And
more
then one other
Jasmine
one came.
flow. Yes.
So we keep motions in a collection section. However, we have a panel section for our med mal cases, which is a static section. If that works for your process, that's totally fine. I think that's the nice thing about Filevine, right? The beauty in it is that you can really make the system what works best for you and your firm. So if you're like, for med mal cases, the static section works perfectly fine. We know that we're only ever going to have five maybe motions for any given med mal case. That's easy to build out and account for. For some other, again, cases, it might not be as cut and dry. And so that's when those items come into play.
Thank you, Jasmine. I'll go ahead and close that out. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if you need us to clarify anything, just let us know. Um, I'll continue on, and I do apologize in advance. I've noticed that my Zoom has been lagging a little bit too. So if I take any pauses or speak over you, Jasmine, please let me know. Um, So to kind of go back to our initial test section that we were creating, so now we're going to actually keep ours to just be a static section for test for this purpose today. So we're going to go ahead and hit save to create our section. And now after I hit save, I have the option here to add in custom fields or widgets. So to start off, for custom fields or widgets, before we actually get into it, I also want to just share with you one that's already been built out. Here we have our intake section. It's a static section that was already built out. As you can see here, this is the internal notes. Again, just for my purpose only of seeing this on the back end, no one can see it on the front end. And then down here, I already see some widgets and fields that have been in placed. What's great about utilizing a section in customs editor is you don't always have to build out a new section. You can always build off of an existing section. So in this case, if I wanted to, I can always update or add specific fields to this intake section. So to kind of go off, when we have custom fields or widgets, once you click add field or widget, it'll automatically default to selecting field. You can go ahead and toggle to widget if you would like to select a widget. We'll start with field types though, and then kind of just go through each field and what their use are for. So to start off for text, these are open-ended textable fields. And you can kind of see here, this would just show a single line text box. This would be a single line list, meaning you can kind of add in additional lines within the text and just fill those out. Multiple lines and multiple lines large. Both of those would just be a larger text box that would be provided on the front end of the project. These are just really great if you have open-ended data that you want to add in there, whether that's a currency amount, a number, an email, whatever it is into that field, you can kind of place it, gives you
The
more flexibility.
The text fields are one of the only fields that you can make changes to after you've created it. So if you start with a single line and realize maybe you're needing to track some more information in there, you're able to come back in and switch the type of text field or make it a URL or case number field. I don't use a ton, but you do have the option to change it. Most of the other fields, once you create it, are not going to allow you to make any changes. And regardless if you choose a static or collection section, this process that you're seeing now is going to be the same.
Thank you, Jasmine. Um, let's start at the top with the rest of them. For amounts like currency, decimal number, percentages, these will actually just be that specific. I guess it would be consistent across the board. So the currency would be a dollar amount that would always show up. The decimal always put in the format of a decimal. Percentage has a percentage at the end. So this kind of just allows to have consistency around the board. And anytime someone wants to put anything in these amount fields, if you want it to kind of be structured in a specific formatting, you'll have that with these amounts fields up here. Calculated currency or calculated fields, you'll actually have to add in these amounts at the top or whatever amount field you want before you can actually add in a calculated currency, decimal number, or percentage. So for example, if I wanted to use a calculated currency field, it will tell me that I have to go ahead and actually put in an amount field before I can even go in and utilize and create this new field. The reason being is this kind of allows you to calculate a specific formula. So if you wanted to add up three different amounts, three different sums, it can kind of automatically do that for you once the data has been put into those three amounts. And then you can kind of come in here and pop that in. Um, am I missing anything on this specific amounts and calculated association, Jasmine?
Say when you can be specific, be specific. So if you're tracking a dollar amount, use the amount field, not an open text field. It's going to be A, more helpful if you're trying to have Filevine do the math for you. But B, it also eliminates any kind of creativity or variability that folks can add when adding actual data in. So if you have an amount field or a dollar amount that you're trying to track, again, use that field. If you use the open text field, somebody could type it in with a dollar sign, somebody could type it in with a comma, somebody could not type in any of those, somebody could write it out as words. When you go to run reports on fields like this or use criteria, you want it to be somewhat consistent. So anytime that you can be specific, whether it's these amount fields or any other fields. Highly recommend, again, if you can, if there's a field for it, use that field type. Um, if you choose a text single line list, where do you build the actual drop down field list? So the single line list is not going to be associated with a drop down field list. It's going to allow you to essentially add multiple line items. And you'll notice that it's not an option in this, like once you create a text field, it's not an option that you can switch to. They're just single text boxes that you can add one after the other, and you can add multiple, but it's not part of a drop down field list. You can add a drop down field list if you'd like as visibility for that one, but they don't really correlate outside of that. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, maybe explain a little bit more. Maybe I missed the mark there. Right.
No, I think that was perfect. But just to kind of give a little bit of visual, we have the drop down list field as well. So if that's something that you like to use over a single text line, you can just go ahead and select the drop down list. We can name this list of options. And then here is where we can go ahead and start adding in our options to choose from. So I think this is really great in order to kind of keep, again, a consistent formatting, or to ensure that, let's say you want to pull a report of all this information, this specific data, everything's going to be consistent throughout just based on the options provided. In terms of spelling or grammatical error, anything like that, we'll be sure to kind of narrow down that user error. So let's say we want to add those in. You can also go ahead, if let's say add in E and G, D. I have the option, one, to move these drop down items in a specific order if I would like, or you have the option to hit this one where it allows you to kind of organize it in alphabetical order. So I'm actually going to click back into it. Now you can see that it's organized my drop down items in alphabetical order, which is super nice because I think it kind of adds a level of organization to it. So we can select that. One last thing before we kind of finish off with the drop down list field is you also have the option to create it as a multiple choice. So it's just dependent on how you want it to be visually shown on the front end. It could either be a drop down list or a multiple choice, just kind of pops all your options up at once, and you don't have to kind of hit the little drop down arrow, and then you can kind of just select which one. But it will only allow you to select one of these items. And then I wanted to quickly touch back on the currency field. So as we had talked about, once you add in your amounts, you can go ahead and add in that calculated field. I thought it would be nice to kind of show a visual of how that would look like to add in your formula. So in your field type, now that I have my amounts set in, I can go to calculated currency, and I can call this total, for example. And then this formula, I can go ahead and type in the name of the fields that were the amount fields. So if I want it to be price, you can see it pops up now for me, and I could do subtracted by the balance and hit create. And now that will show up. So on the front end, when we kind of take a look at it, it will allow me to add in whatever number I add into the price and the balance, the dollar amounts. It will subtract it and then provide me that answer in the totals automatically.
On the calculated ones, you can type in standard numbers too. So if you're like, I want the price multiplied by 2 or divided by 100, you can type that into the system. You don't have to like create a field for you to put in 100. You can just type those into the formula space in the total. And it
Perfect.
on balance that you could change the amount type. Can you click on that like balance field? So
Yeah. So you can go ahead and yeah.
allow you to change it too, which is a new feature. Before it was like just the text. So they're always making edits to customs editor. So what we go over today, they might have something completely different in 6 months, or some different options. So always be on the lookout for those new things in kind of customs editor.
Yes, that is true. That's actually a good catch. I didn't even notice that. Moving along, I just kind of wanted to quickly touch on the rest of some of these fields. They're pretty, I would say, self-explanatory for the most part. The case number will be that unique project ID number that you can kind of just add in to assign, that's like the unique project ID, excuse me, that's assigned to a specific project or case that you're working on. We have the date, which this is great to add in a specific date of incident, or a specific date that you no longer really need to have any reminders set on this date. You don't need to calendar it, but it is for tracking purposes. So again, like date of intake. Deadline with reminders, though, will be this date field that will include a due and a done, and it will allow whatever you add in into the due field to be added into your calendar. And this way you'll be able to kind of keep a reminder of open-ended reminders that you may need. So this field is really great to kind of keep track of that. And then you can also add in your completed date so that it would track and kind of let you know like, hey, this is no longer something that we have to keep track of. What's really great about a deadline with reminders, it also gives you the option to add in a specific or relevant reminder schedule. So you can create a reminder schedule on the back end. use one that you already have built out. And then this way you'll receive notifications, reminder notifications in that specific project on upcoming due dates, or maybe you need a 30-day reminder to the due date, and then a 20-day, and then a 10-day. I'll remind you up until you put that completed date into the done field. Um, so it's nice to be able to kind of track these as well. The next one we actually had just gone over was that drop down list. So we kind of already touched on that one, but if you have any other questions, just let us know. A file attachment. Um, with file attachment and multiple file attachments, we typically recommend using a multiple file attachment. This allows you to add in the document itself. The reason we recommend multiple over just a singular file attachment is in the instance that you decide that you want to add in more documents, or you want to track, you want to have that specific section to track multiple different documents versus just one particular one. With the file attachment as well, when you click into it, it does allow you to do two things. One, you can create an auto tag. So if you wanted to upload a document and you want any document uploaded to this file attachment field or multiple file attachment field to be of high importance and to be able to track that later to search it up, you can just type in high importance, create that tag, and then anytime a document has been uploaded here, it will allow you to, it'll automatically have that tag attached. With any file attachment or multiple file attachment upload fields, it also gives you the option to go ahead and select a specific folder to kind of keep track and do cleanup with doc management and allow you to add it to a specific folder right off the bat. So anything that's added here into this attachment field will also drop into the docs section.
And it maintains that folder structure. So even if you delete the folder that you had mapped there, it still maintains it and will add that folder in as you update. So just keep in mind that if you do update your folder structure, either frequently or every so often, that you may want to come back in and check those attachment fields. You also notice that in the file attachment or multiple file attachment, that you have the option to, if you have AI in your system and you're paying for that in Filevine, you have the ability to enable AI, essentially meaning that anytime that you upload a document to this particular field or file attachment, the documents that you upload are going to be read by the AI and give you an output. Um, so that's kind of what you're seeing with this AI field setup. If you don't see that, totally fine. It just means that you don't have AI enabled in your org. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is for the tags. If you don't see the ability to create a tag, just chalk with maybe one of your super admins. They may have more permissions in the advanced tab than you do, which includes the ability to create tags. You should still be able to search for tags that are already created and kind of attach them there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine, on that. And then we also have your incident date, which we kind of discussed. So this specifically you can use for your date of intake versus this date field here. You could probably track historical data or a historical date that maybe you need to keep track of. So we do have two different options for an incident date and your regular date field. And then as we're moving on, we also have this multi-select list. So earlier we kind of talked about that drop-down option, the drop-down list field, which allows you to select either a drop-down option or see it in the formatting of a multiple choice. The multi-select is if you have options that you want to add here in the data that you can select multiple pieces of information. So in this case, maybe we could say, let's
In
see,
or
yes.
ice cream flavors if you want to be fun.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds good. So let's say ice cream flavors, and then we can go ahead and just start adding those in. And then how this would look up, pop up on the front end is allow you to select more than one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and just create that as well. So then at the end of this, we can actually preview how this looks like on the front end with these fields. What else do we want to touch on? Let's see. Perfect. And then person, this is just where you can go ahead and add in a person contact card. And this will allow you to keep track of if you add in their email, their address. It can all be tracked within this person contact card. So it allows you to search up the contact and then populate all the information that's within their contact card into this field. Person list, it's essentially the same thing as a person field, but allows you to add additional individuals. So if you have more than one person you want to add in, you can use this person list to just add a new person if you have one.
And if you
A
click
pro
into this field, the person or person list field, there's a few
Yeah.
like things that you can do. You can limit to a specific contact type. So if you have like in your intake, the person who, took this intake that's an internal team member, you can choose from the contact types and select maybe firm staff so that it limits the search in that bar to just your firm staff. So if you have a whole bunch of John Smiths, it can narrow it down based off of that contact type. You can also limit to just project contacts. So those are folks that have already been added into the project that it will search from. That is going to narrow it down like severely. So just be cautious because if somebody hasn't been added in, they won't show up. You do have the option to clear either of these filters and search kind of the larger address book, but the initial search would be limited if you did select those options. Um, Somebody mentioned in the comments, it's a struggle to decide on what type of field to use for what. Do you have suggestions or tips on what type to use when trying to rebuild a section in an effort to create an electronic workflow so that there are checkpoints within the process? For instance, the legal staff completes items 1 through 3 in settlements and needs to mark it ready for accounting to review. And then accounting needs to trigger the managing director to final review. Are there things to consider in deciding what field type to use so to pull in for criteria on a report for each checkpoint? This may be too broad to answer, but wanted to ask. So
I
there's a,
think,
go
oh
ahead.
yeah, go. Oh, I was just going to say maybe we could jump into going over the widgets. There are a few ways you can approach it. The first way that I don't believe we'll get the chance to really touch on today is phase-based task flows, which I think would be potentially a way that you can go ahead and streamline that process to assign certain tasks to certain members. But you did mention saying once one staff handles their task and they trigger the task to someone else. So I think if we go to widgets, the best course of action here, one of them, and Jasmine, you can correct me if maybe I'm not hitting the mark with this, is a task flow trigger button. This will allow you to go ahead and create a task flow. So if we want this to be trigger task to legal assistant, we have to create the task flow first. We can also change the icon picture. We're going to go ahead and create that. And then after this, you would go to your task flow setup. And this will allow you'll have to go ahead and select the project template you're working on, but essentially this would then allow you to create those tasks and actually assign it to a specific role. So you can assign it to the legal assistant. That being said, we also have the option to create conditional logic or have fields shown as visible based on conditional logic. So if let's say once a task has been triggered to the legal assistant, once they complete it, we need to maybe have an associated field that can trigger, that would open a trigger task to the accounting team. So there are ways that we can kind of go about building this and streamlining it. I do think that this type of fields you can select would be dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. In this case, I do think the task flow button would be the best associated with the specific role to kind of follow that specific workflow. But I don't
Some
know if I'm missing anything here.
No, I think that I would recommend the task flow trigger buttons in tandem with a few other things. The multi-select list, you can use it as kind of a checklist instead. So if you're like, okay, the first person needs to have completed these 3 documents, you can, make it a checklist so that they can kind of check those off. Once they've done all that they need to do, they would trigger the accountant, who would then maybe have, as Shannon mentioned, some items that pop up. Now, the other thing that you might want to do is under widgets, there's an option called instructions. That is used for formatting, but also used to give instruction text throughout the sections to make it easier for you and your staff to navigate a section. So if there are things that you want to remind, maybe the legal staff, right, that they need to do, make sure that steps 1 through 3 are completed prior to pressing this button. Once they're done, go ahead and trigger this button, complete any tasks that are, or maybe complete any tasks that are outstanding, and then trigger this button. Once you're done, put done in this text box or something like that. So that way the rest of the data can pop up. There's a few things that you can kind of do to make it a little bit easier for you and your staff in any given section. For the instruction fields, you do have to type into the instruction text field in order for it to actually show. Sometimes we'll utilize these as spacers so that your columns line up. If you only add data here, you're not going to see anything. So make sure that any text that you put in here is text that you actually want to see on the front end. And again, this can be conditional or contingent based off of other items that are in kind of customs editor. You also have the ability here to use some of those formatting things. So the double equal signs that make it big and bold after, or the underscores that, make it, I think it's bold, not big necessarily. So you have a few formatting options. You can make it purple. You can use emojis here. So if you're like, I want to do the caution sign or the stop sign because I want people to really be able to see this, all of that is possible in these instruction texts. And I think that that might help kind of with that workflow or process that you have. Okay, and then there's a couple more that have come in. If we
Yeah.
have a report fusion template built, where do we find it so that we can make edits to it? Not in a subject for today, but if I'm in an email in Outlook and want to add a document from Filevine easily, how can I do this? Drag and drop doesn't seem to work. Okay.
Yeah. Should we maybe go to a project and try that out? So sorry, I don't have the
Yeah.
chat pulled up, so let me see. Um, let's
The
just go into,
if you're using the Outlook plugin, is that what you're meaning? For the email, there's a way that you can do it directly from Filevine. That might be maybe a little bit easier for you. I think Shannon
yeah,
can.
so if we wanted to do it within Filevine, I don't know if our free help project has like the doc gen or the generated template. It sounds like we are working off of a generated template. But if we go into the docs section, I'll show you there. If you click into the document you are trying to attach to an email to send out, you can just go ahead and select that document, hit the 3 dots here, and then this will allow you to email document. Once you select this, it will just pop up your email. So we use Gmail. So I have the Gmail that pops up. It will have the attachment, and you just go ahead and fill in the rest of that email.
Um, yeah, when you download it, it'll download as if you click those 3 dots and click email document, it's gonna download it, and then whatever your provider is what's going to open up.
Mhm.
So if we're on our laptops, so if our default email provider is our personal email, you just want to double check, right, to make sure that it's your work one that you're sending it from. Okay.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions, Jasmine, till we get through?
The workflow is usually that they're in the email first and want to add a doc. Is there an easy way to do that? I'm trying to think in the Outlook plugin if that's possible. Let me do some digging and we will pop back to that. As far as the report fusion template, that's in the advanced tab under this report fusion option right here. That's where you would go to view your reports and make any edits.
Yes, you would just have to click into the search bar to be able to search a specific report or that plus sign to create a new one.
Perfect. All right, back to customs editor.
Okay, let's go ahead. Okay. So going over, I know we've kind of been jumping around just based on our questions, but kind of just going over the rest of these remaining fields and what they're used for. Your project link here can allow you to link to a related project within the system. So if, let's say, you're working on an auto case and you have the client one and client two's passenger two, and you need to have a separate project open for them, you can go ahead and actually link their project within that one. So you're able to kind of go back and forth to the related project. Project list link, for example, here, this is kind of the same aspect as the other list we've talked about. This allows you to add in more than one multiple related projects. And then for any of these, you also can select the project type if you want to limit to a specific project type. We also then
So you'll
have,
need both the project link and the project link list field in order for them to like work. Sorry, can you hear me?
yes.
Sorry, my computer's lagging. You'll need both the project link and the project linked list field in order for it to work properly. So you will add both and then connect them. If you're an optimization client and that's with us and that's something that you're interested in adding, or a launch client with us and that's something that you're interested in adding, we can definitely do that. If not, there's some support articles on kind of how to connect those so that they work, so that the project link list is going to be all of your companion projects essentially, and the project link is going to be that main project, usually the driver, right, in personal injury cases. All right, sorry, Shannon.
No, no, thank you so much. Also, my side is lagging as well, so feel free to just stop me at any point. Right. What we have next here is actually the reference field, which I know we kind of had touched on a little earlier. Again, a reference field is going to mirror that value of the selected field into this field and also provide you a link to the initial field so you can kind of go to a different section if that's where the field is placed. So this kind of allows you to add in that reference field once it's been built out into here. So for example, any of this, all in the information, let's say if we go ahead and use in progress balance, this reference field will pull in that information from the in progress balance into this one. So it's
You
great if you go ahead,
sorry,
Jasmine.
be visible to you all right now. So if you're like, I don't see that on my list, it's something that you do have to turn on currently. Eventually, it will be released to everybody, so you will have this. But right now, it's part of this Vitals beta that you can kind of see in the background here, grayed out. You do have to have that turned on in order to see those reference fields. Sorry, just wanted to point that out so folks aren't confused.
No, thank you so much. I always forget that it's not turned on for everyone yet, so that is my bad. I do apologize. But yes, where Jasmine mentioned, once you click on it, you can go ahead and enable that beta. And then to finish off with fields, um, we do have your URL and your URL list. So essentially, this URL just allows you to pop in that URL within this field. And then once you go ahead and do so, it also has a little arrow next to it that will allow you to open that URL. And the same thing with the URL list is very similar, same concept where you can add in multiple URLs at a time and you can kind of go in and pop in the same URLs if you were keeping track of multiple. So if we wanted to add in Filevine URL, we can go ahead, hit create, and then we can test that out on the front end.
And Shannon, there's a
And then
couple.
we,
I know we're getting close to time, so sorry. Let's go ahead and answer these questions before we jump
yeah,
the fields. For formatting a text in customs editor like bold, italicize, underline, where can I find a cheat sheet? That I put in the chat a link to Filevine's support page that has a list of kind of all of those, that double equal sign after, and all of that good stuff. So you should be able to find it there. Um, Next question was, this wasn't on topic, but if we have time, love the help. When I use the project email, we're seeing duplicate versions of documents being saved in the documents folder. For example, if they serve discovery and they go to their email and attach that document and press send, that original is still in the discoveries folder, but now a new copy of that document is in the docs folder as well with hashtag attachment. This makes other documents, look unorganized and confuses people when there are duplicates in the wrong location. What's going wrong here? It's happening even when we uncheck attached docs and the email. I think it's because we're tagging the case using the project email. Is there a way to keep tagging emails without getting the duplicates? So if you are CCing or BCCing or whatever else a project email, the entire thread is going to keep coming into your activity feed, and any attachments are going to keep going into your docs section. If you have the Outlook plugin, that can eliminate some of that, right? Deselecting the attachments each time that you kind of push it over. But if you are sending an email and attaching that client's or the project's email with it, that's why you're probably seeing those duplicates. And then you're seeing that hashtag attachment because, again, it's anytime that an attachment comes in from an email, it's automatically going to tag it hashtag attachment, hashtag email. Filevine isn't able to determine that you've already kind of put that document in, because you can have multiple documents named the same thing that are different versions. Maybe one is redlined and one is not, so the system isn't going to just assume that you don't want that document in there. So try just using the Outlook plugin maybe instead of also attaching that CC, and see if that helps. If you're still seeing it, you might want to chat in Filevine support. That might be intended functionality, so we'd have to check with them. But hopefully that helps answer that question. And then, is there a widget in Customs Editor where I can generate an email to be sent to all contacts I add to a certain section or subsection? In litigation files, I got a lot of contacts I need to send group emails to attorneys and their paralegals, which constantly change. I'd like to be able to add all their contacts in a section and then just click a button to generate an email for all of them.
Yeah, so actually kind of getting into the next custom fields, it's widgets. If you go ahead and hit action button where we were looking for that trigger a task flow, there's also the option to go ahead and send an email. So once this is selected, you can go ahead, put in your name for this would just be the email template name, so the field name. And then you can go ahead here and using this available field replacement, you can actually pull in who you want to assign it to. So let's say um, you have the attorneys and their paralegals and then the contact cards associated in a specific data point field. We can go ahead and actually add these in, kind of like if any of you guys have DocGen, it's the same thing. So you would go ahead and add in the codes. I think because I'm sharing my screen, it's lagging a little bit, but you would basically add in that code here. And then anytime you click that send email or generate email, this action button, essentially, it will actually be able to kind of pull up and pop out that email with all that data pulled in.
And
You
the
also have the
Sorry, I was just going to say the body can also include those codes.
Yes. Yeah. The body can include the codes as well as the subject. So you also have the option here to already select copying the project email so that it will automatically be saved into Filevine afterwards as well. Um, and I think this should have loaded. So these are kind of the codes that you can pull into the email, whether it's the subject line, the to, the from, or that body of the email, as Jasmine mentioned. And then you can go ahead and just copy this replacement field over and paste it within that email. Um, if you do have a long list, we typically recommend just command find or search and find. I think in Mac it's Control F to be able to locate which field you're trying to pull into this body email here.
So essentially, because she's asking where to get the codes,
Oh, yes.
placement fields is what Shannon clicked on in order for that list to pull up. And the codes are connected to the fields. So if you, for instance, have a field that's called opposing attorneys or opposing counsel, or, paralegals, defendant paralegals, or something along those lines, you can search for that code and then pull the full names or the email addresses of those folks in based off of the contact cards that you have stored in Filevine.
Does that seem to help a little bit more, Maren? Just want to make sure. Um, let's just move on to the next widget. And if there's any more questions, we'll just keep an eye out for the chat if we need to go back to that specific email button. In this action button as well, you do have the link. Yeah, we can absolutely talk through it after as well. So this link button is just essentially where you can go ahead and add in that URL. So it will allow you to go ahead and add in a different like section link, or if you wanted to open a court calculator website, you can go ahead and pop in that URL here, and this will give you the option to also open it in a new tab. So it wouldn't close out of your current progress, but you at least have the ability to have shortcuts to specific websites or maybe a different section within the Filevine project that you utilize. If you wanted to utilize a Filevine project section and you wanted to go from this test section to maybe the intake section, you would just need to, if you hover over here, it kind of allows you to select the replaceable keywords. So it's the same thing. You would use one of these field codes and pop that into the URL in replacement of that project ID number. So instead of this project number here, you would just put in the field code for project ID, and then it would populate to that specific project that you're working on. We also have your doc gens. So your doc gen and your multiple template, both of those, if you've enabled doc gens for your Filevine, this allows you to go ahead and add in your templates here before you go to the doc gen setup in your advanced tool to actually code in those templates. We typically, again, we always recommend the multi-template fields just because then in that case you have options to select more than one template, or later down the road, even if you want to use a singular template now and then add in a different document template, we can of course go ahead and add that in into a multi-template one. Your instruction fields, this is kind of what we had talked about earlier with streamlining a specific workflow. This instruction field allows you to add in any instructions you want to share on the front end. It's also great for formatting purposes. As you could see on this end, when we go into the test section, typically our fields are quite long. So you would have to go ahead and use the instruction field as a formatting spacer. So if you want to add in spacer here, and then maybe we want to shorten the field for price, we can go ahead and just add this in, keep the instructions text blank. And then I know we haven't gone over rows or columns yet, but in here you would go ahead and select which row that specific field you want to format is in. So every time you create a new field or widget, it automatically populates into the next numbered column down. So in this case, I want to pop it into row 2. And then I think we have 5 or 6 orders that you can have for the numbers of max per row. So in this case, if I have price on the back end at 20, I can place this just right after it at 21.
We usually recommend at most 3 items on any given row, but there are certain fields that don't always play nice with multiple items on it. So your multiple text boxes, we usually put those on their own line so that you have enough space to type in, or we do maybe 2 of those in a line, never any more than that. And then the deadline with reminder fields also don't really do well. They like truncate and you're not really able to see the data if you have 3 items on a line. So again, for those, maybe 2 or 1, just depending. As you kind of get into Customs Editor a little bit more, you'll find a groove, find what kind of works and looks aesthetically pleasing, and use those instruction fields to assist with being able to have, things aligned a little bit better without messing up your complete flow of your page. And I know we're almost at time, so we probably won't have a ton of time to dive into like the other widgets here. Most of them are self-explanatory. The subsection headers are going to allow you to have that table of contents at the top. I feel like that's the only kind of note there. The advanced properties that we didn't get to, I do want to just touch on. Shannon mentioned the row and order. That's again where it lives, the row and column. So the row is again across, the order is going to be the column that it's in. And then the visibility is if it needs to be only shown when a certain item is selected, certain data points. So I think someone mentioned their workflow, right? You have your initial team and then your accountant kind of comes in. You could say, hey, are you done with this? Once they type done into this box, then the accountant's information populates for them to be able to do it, something along those lines. Um, you have some options kind of there. And then the locked, obsolete, and there's usually another field once you've actually created it required. The little question marks tell you exactly what those are for and mean so that you know you can attack those there. And I know we're just down to a minute. So I do want to just wrap up. If you all are like, we need help with customs editor, I get the gist, but the email templates, I need some help building out. We offer optimization services. I added Shannon and my email into the chat so that if you do want to engage in any of our services, you can reach out and we can get you connected with an optimizer so that you can get kind of those items checked off. We have a variety of kind of plans. So if you're like, I can't afford 2,500 or I don't have enough work to really justify that price, we'll work with you to kind of figure out a price that will work for you with kind of keeping in mind the scope of what you're looking to do and what you're looking for. So feel free to reach out to us. This recording will be on our website. Again, we do record our free help sessions and post them. So past customs editor sessions are on there. We probably maybe had more time to get to the contact setup in those. So feel free, or maybe people ask different questions in those. So we, had different things that we showed. So if you're like, I need a little bit more, feel free to look at those past customs editor kind of sessions to get some more in-depth answers there. And again, as always, if you all ever want to engage in our services, let us know. Thank you so much, Shannon, first off, for sharing your wealth of knowledge, and for all of you for joining us today. If you all, again, have any questions or need anything, feel free to reach out and email us. If not, I hope that we see you in a future free help session. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much, Jasmine.
Of course, bye-bye.
Bye.